Um, Good afternoon, all. And
I am
the
in my redistricting meeting. What's up?
the item that we had teed up at our last meeting as being the first thing we wanted to discuss today was potential timing for our first public hearing. And Tom, I think you were the one who specifically mentioned that ought to be taken up first. Do you want to start that?
Yeah, I know that the bulk of public comments may well come after we've put out a draft map, especially a first draft. But I think there would be some real advantage to having a public hearing when we're just at the outset of the process. Part of that is maybe to assure the public that we are listening and we're ready to take their comments, even if they're early in the process. And part of it is, I suspect that will get us perhaps a story in the newspaper or something like that that shows that we are at work here and will reinforce the idea that we're ready to hear from the public about these issues. We've only really touched a couple of times on the meat of what it is we're going to be doing here. Patricia, for example, spoke up about the fact that there are 3 legislative districts close by her house. And in an urban area, I don't think that's uncommon. I have another legislative district that starts about a block away from me. But I think for some people, they may have strong feelings about that. I don't know how many of us have looked at the existing districts as they are right now, but I've seen those maps. They are on this county legislature website. One in particular that I'll just grab for no reason other than that it was very obvious to me because I pulled up the 39th district first. It is the district that covers 3 of the hill towns, except that one of the hill towns, Knox, it spills over into Guilderland. Or maybe, no, it must be Bern. Bern spills, the district spills over into Guilderland, but then a little piece of that town is in a different legislative district. And I could see somebody saying, well, now why aren't those 3 rural towns a district of their own? And so there may be comments like that that are out there that to the extent possible, we should follow existing town lines or existing other municipal boundaries. One of the difficulties of that, of course, is that in cities, the lines are ward lines and they'll all be redrawn, even as we're redrawing the county legislative district. So even if you were to try to follow a ward line in the city, you're going to run into a problem because those wards are about to change. But I do think that there is enough interest out there generally in what we're doing, perhaps growing because the state committee that's doing the redistricting of congressional seats is getting more and more visibility. And I suspect sooner or later, there'll be something similar about the redrawing of assembly and state senate lines. And it behooves us, I think, to get out there early and to have a public hearing, perhaps in January or February, to try and get some comment from the public about what it is that we're doing. So that was my rationale for it. But other people may have different opinions, and I'd be very open to hearing what everybody else has to say.
Interesting map, Patrick. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. I tend to agree. I think that there is value. I think that it will assist us in our desire to be transparent and to make the public aware that we're here and what we're doing, and that it will assist us in letting them know that we want to hear from them, that this process is not us sitting on a hill someplace and making the decisions, but that it is intended to be a public process with the public having input into that process. So I would tend to agree. I am somewhat concerned about overall timing of things, because I think that whoever is going to be doing our mapping should be in place before we have that hearing, because I think that whoever is going to be the principal person involved in doing the mapping should sit through that hearing and hear the comments as well. And together with our council. Are there other comments as to what people think about when we ought to have our first public hearing? Sita, you did.
Someone's
Warren?
got a hand up.
I have
Warren,
one.
Yeah, I was going to say that I agree with both of you. I think it is a great indication that we're not sitting up in some ivory tower somewhere just making decisions. Although the timing, as you said, Larry, is optimal, and maybe those two trains will meet as we propose to have a public hearing. Hopefully, the timeline will meet up appropriately.
anyone
And by
else want to
that,
comment?
I meant that we would have the mapper on board by the time we might,
Right. Joan, what do you think?
I agree that the mapper should be present, because I'm not convinced of the changes. I have ideas of the changes, but I don't know that they would change in the way and in the places that are there. So I think it would benefit us to have that mapper in place to hear it before getting to work on it. So if we could decide we will have a council present, we would also have the mapper present. It doesn't have to be complete, but I think as soon as they come on board, they may want to hear, because see, I think more participation occurs with Zoom than in person, because people can speak from the comfort of their homes by Zoom, especially that this virus is still prominent in some people's mind. So I think you get more on Zoom than others, but I think you do need both, as you said, Larry.
Sita? Thoughts? How about you, Leif?
Julia's on too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly, until I just listened to Joan, I was much more advocating to wait and do something in person, because I actually think that we lose something by not being in person. But I'm somewhat now convinced that maybe Zoom is the way to go. So I don't have a lot of clear thoughts at this point. I'm wavering. But I guess because in my professional life, I have really noticed us losing a lot of information when we are interacting via Zoom over when we're interacting in person. I guess I still lean towards wanting to do something in person if we can.
And my comment on that would be that I would agree that we ought to have an in-person public hearing, but I think that the first one, just given at least my preference for early timing, I think probably makes some sense on Zoom. And I think that it is possible that we could get greater participation by the public of being able to do it from home rather than having to travel to whatever location we end up having. Leif?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was muted before. In terms of the timing of the hearing vis-a-vis the hiring a mapper, I think there are so many contingencies in our plan, in our schedule, that I wouldn't hold up the phone for the sake of the mapper. I would assume that whatever hearing, whether it's on Zoom or in person, is going to be recorded. There's going to be notes taken, and any substantive comments made by the participants, by the public, can certainly be transmitted, communicated to the mapper when that person or those persons are on board. I don't think they need to be there to feel the chemistry necessarily.
Any other comments? So why don't we then generally press forward in that direction of having our first public hearing in probably mid to late January to early February. And so just making a note. And in that case, we're going to want to get notice of that hearing out at a reasonable time next month, probably.
You said March, April timeframe. What was it? The rough timeframe you said?
Early to mid January. I'm sorry, mid to late January into early February, somewhere's in that roughly 3-week time frame of January 15th to the 10th of February.
Sorry, phone never stops ringing over here. I just want to note, because you're talking about Zoom and in person. So we've done more than 120. I lost track at this point. It may be 130 now. Remote meetings, and I could say for our public hearings, we're definitely up from what we previously experienced on regular items. I don't think there's been any change on like contested items. We pretty much always have a speaker, even when some days or months we would go down to the chamber and no one would show up. So it is definitely beneficial to the public to be able to do it remotely from their house. I don't want to steer this one way or the other. I just want to bring in that perspective. It's beneficial to all of you, of course, but it's also beneficial to the public. I mean, we've never had people fly in as far as I know. And last summer we had a guy from, I think, Washington State and Texas on the phone. So, or on Zoom. I imagine the company they represented wouldn't have foot the bill for a flight, but they're happy to pay him to speak to us. So it's just something to think about. The map I pulled up on my screen is the Albany County. I'll pull it back up. I always just search Google for Albany County GIS. I will forward you a link to this. And within it, all those red lines are the municipal borders. And then on the right side, you got options for choices, one of which is the Albany County legislative districts. So you can see them on an actual map, and it's pretty convenient. I will note one thing. If you zoom in, you can get pretty close, but if you get too close, the district line just magically disappears. I don't know how to fix that, but you just zoom back out, you can get a general sense. So if you are interested in seeing where the lines lie today, I'll send this link right now to everyone. It's a helpful tool. I use it all the time. Also, if you want to know what your neighbors pay for taxes, you can look at that. That information's there. So I'm going to send this right now.
Super. Thanks, Pat. Any other comments on? Yes, Leif.
A question, is anybody taking notes of actions or decisions in Patricia's absence?
I'm trying to.
Okay, I mean, let me know if you want any help.
Okay, thanks, Leif.
I have a question for Pat.
Yep.
What are the details needed for this hearing? And what happened with the administrative support?
Okay. I can speak to what is necessary for a public hearing that needs to be carried out as a matter of law. What has to happen when we do a public hearing is it has to be noticed. I believe it's 3 days, but we always shoot for 5 days ahead of time. And it will be noticed in Albany County has 2 newspapers, the Times Union and the Evangelist. we would notice it in both, post it on the website. If it's done by Zoom, the way we do Zoom is we ask people to sign up and then we send them the links. There's another way to do that. I don't like it. It's a security nightmare. If it was in person, you just have to notice the time, location of the event. So basically a week out, it can be, in general, under the public officers law, any meeting scheduled more than 1 week in advance, the notice has to be put out 3 days ahead of time. So we always do it 5 days. The Times Union likes to publish legals on Thursdays. Our public hearings are on Tuesdays, so it's always 5 days. The second question was administrative support. So I talked to HR. The easiest way to get you someone is to get a grad student from the Rockefeller College. College students are apparently a little bit more difficult. There's more rules attached to them. So if you want to get one from the Rockefeller College, I can have that posted prior to, I can have that started tomorrow morning. If you want to post it somewhere else, I can maybe do that as well. I know Rockefeller has essentially a virtual signboard where these types of things are posted. So, and if that fails, then we'll definitely find different options. But I think last time you talked about redundant, you could certainly do 2 of them. The question then becomes payment. If you want them to be paid, they can be paid. I don't know in this expedited system if we could work out college credits for them. But I mean, we did set aside money for whatever you wanted, within reason, of course, but there's a funding source that's available.
My only concern about doing it for credit is that really requires significant supervision and guidance of the intern, and I'm not sure that any of us really wants to take that on, that kind of intensive guidance. Leif?
That tends to be more common with undergraduate students as well. The graduate students typically need to get paid for whatever activity they do, whether it's teaching or research. So I think we should expect to pay them.
I agree. Hey,
I very much agree, yeah.
Anyone
Patrick,
have
Patrick, is
Okay.
there a standard amount that we would be paying? I don't, especially if you've got a particular college that you've got an arrangement with and a number of hours that would entail per week?
That's a good question that I'm not going to answer because I don't know the answer, and I'm sure HR does, so I'll ask.
Yeah, if you contact the assistant dean at the college, I'm sure he can give you all the whys and wherefores.
Patrick, would that mean that they'll be on the county's payroll, or they would be on Rockefeller College's payroll?
It would be the county.
reimburse the college?
We have interns every summer. We have interns all year long, ultimately. In the summer, we do high school and college, and they're Albany County employees. And so it's technically the legislative intern program, although the legislature itself only has about maybe 6 of them, 5 of them. We put about 72 of them throughout the county, throughout our county offices.
Okay.
So I would tell you the rate of pay, but Caitlin, can you hear me? Or Javon, do you remember what we paid them?
I believe it was in a range of either 13.
13.
Was it 13 or 14?
5.
no.
I'll get you answers to that. That's what we paid hours. I can find out if there's an anticipated rate of pay because we've already have some kind of system set up with Rockefeller College.
Thanks, Pat. Anything further on either the interns or public hearing? If not, the next item that was on my personal agenda was the mapping RFP, and I do apologize for not getting an agenda out to everybody in advance of the meeting. I somehow ran out of week. So I didn't see any point in sending it out to you all at 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Oh,
The mapping RFP, the only comment that I had received since the last meeting was a comment from Leif, who was quoting the introduction to the legislation, the statement of legislative findings and intent, where it says that the commission's work shall be accomplished through a professional process that invites experts in the area of redistricting law, county geography, and other important elements that are key to securing a credible, responsive, and accountable redistricting process and outcome. And Leif was raising the question of whether within our qualifications and scope of work, we needed to make some reference to knowledgeability on the county geography. And I guess my, without at all prejudicing the responses, my thought was that we might not want to limit the mapping software expertise in this case, but rather if we desire expertise on the county's geography and demographics, that we seek it separately. I don't know what anybody thinks about that. My fear was that it would be overly limiting in the potential respondents.
What section is that you're reading from?
It's in the statement of legislative findings and intent. If you've got the local law printed out, it's on the first page.
Okay, because what I'm thinking, and when I got Life's email, I was more inclined to think what you were thinking, that it didn't necessarily pertain to the mapper, and that's where I was trying to look here. In other words, through our public forums and other process is where we can get that information in. And I just don't see where it's specifically tied to our RFP for a mapper.
Anyone else have comments on that specific issue? If not, were there any other comments on the RFP itself? I did make a number of edits as I went through and dropped the sections into the form of the RFP.
well, I will speak up, Larry, and say that I, for one, appreciate all the work that you've put in as our volunteer chair on trying to get this thing into shape so that we can get this out, because it really is an important step in getting us to where we can even hold hearings and conduct our business. So thank you for doing that. It looked good to me. And I think we should proceed with it as quick as we can, because we know there are going to be a lot of other people out there searching for mappers in this next year. And I'd like to see us get an early start on it if we can.
Warren, did you find the changes that I had made on the proposal evaluation to be adequate? You had some very good comments with regard to that. I didn't know if my modification of that worked for you.
I don't know. I just pulled it up, Larry. I didn't have any more changes, but I'm pulling it up from your 11/5 email. So is there a local updated copy or just from what's in that email?
What's in that email?
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I'm fine with that.
Okay. If no one else has any comments, then I
can
think.
get the timeline. I was
Yep.
able to get it for last time. I know you added a couple of days to the regular schedule this go around. If we can, if you think you're really set and you can do it this week, we won't have that issue with Christmas. So, but again, it will need to go out to be published in the newspaper.
Right.
And I I believe it's the Friday, gets you the following Thursday. So if we can get it out the door by Friday, then it's published next Thursday. 20 days is, I don't know, December 15th-ish, I think. So middle of December. But I'll get clarification. I can send out an email.
Okay.
That sounds good. I'd like to see us move that quickly if we can.
Right. My original thought had been that we should wait on issuing this until after we had council in place. But as I have stared at the calendar, I have concluded that we don't have that luxury. Okay, then you have, I think, the version that we were working off, Pat. And if you can run it through your magic wand there. You want me to send you one that's not a markup?
Please.
Okay, I will do that.
Patrick, I have what might amount to a technical question.
Mhm.
We are talking now about the RFP for mapping services. I don't have a gut feel for how much that's going to be. We could have the same issue of whether it's over 100,000 or it's under 100,000 and what steps are necessary. But I feel I have to ask this question. Are we looking at legislative reorganization this year, this coming January?
This is or next year is an organizational year, but it's this midterm one. So what Mr. Klingen's talking about is our membership is 4-year terms, and so January 2020, everyone was sworn in on January 1st, 2020. They'd like to bring me in on New Year's Day. After 2 years, which will happen in a month and a half, there's an organizational meeting. There's 3 votes. 3? I don't want to leave anyone out. 4. The chairman is appointed or reappointed. The clerk and deputy clerk are, and then the council are. But that shouldn't change anything here. Sorry, it's getting very dark, and I just realized how dark my camera is. They're running in 2023 for 2024.
Yeah, my point is entirely that if we need votes on the contract board to approve this, if there's no chair of the legislature, there can't be a contracts board meeting with just the other 2.
There could be.
Okay, all right. So I suppose that's a possibility. If it needs to go to the legislature and the legislature hasn't appointed its committees yet, is that an impediment to getting legislative approval in January for a contract?
So the committees by rule have to be appointed within 20 days of the organizational meeting, which our organizational meeting will be January 3rd, most likely. And our committees meet in the last or the 3rd week of that month. So they'll be appointed. There's no issue there.
Okay, but in that circumstance, we might be looking at approval at the February meeting for our RFP, for our mapper, which means, then a delay after the approval till you get a signed contract. Now you're looking at maybe the 3rd week of February before you have a mapper on board. That's the kind of thing that I'm worried about because, losing a month there from when you open the bids to when you get the final approval and get it signed could be critical to our finishing date, which we are hoping for the end of June. So I just wanted to get a feel for exactly how that would work, but it does sound like we could end up with a situation where if the contract was over 100,000, we could be looking at mid-February before it gets legislative approval.
I'm sure I can get an estimate by tomorrow for what the anticipated cost is.
Okay. It would be easier, obviously, if it was under 100,000. And of course, we have the whole thing to go through again with the MMD subcommittee, their council, and then their mapper.
Right.
I have a question.
Yep.
Will we have another
Joan.
evaluating team?
That's the next topic. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So, and then this is, they're almost going to overlap. So I think we have to have another team that is not including any of the people who are going to be on the council evaluating team. I don't know if anyone is particularly interested in being on the evaluation team for MAPPR. But I certainly would be welcome to volunteers.
Ms. Joan, I'll volunteer.
Thank you, Joan. And I would ask if,
How many people do you need on team?
I would think 3.
That's how it's set up, that there are 3 evaluators. And the interesting part is they can't really converse with each other, and they can't, I guess the word is collude on what their conclusions are going to be. They each have to operate independently, scoring the proposals, and then they get together after the scoring is done, as I understand it. Patrick, is that a good way to describe it?
Yeah, if nobody else is volunteering, I would like to volunteer
Yeah,
for the
that's
mapper.
accurate.
Thanks, Sita. Thank you, Sita.
Yeah, I would like to
What
do
was your,
the mapper.
thanks, Sita.
So we still need one more.
Yeah, we will still need one more.
I'm
I
on, I'm
I
on
can
the,
Julia,
I can work
Pardon?
with Joan and Sita on that.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. Super. Thanks, Julia. Okay. And I'm trying to think if there was anything. Those were the items that I had specifically identified. Warren, are you set on the your scoring tool for the council RFP?
Yeah,
We're gonna have to bring it up at a meeting. I mean, we may have a little time, but we're gonna have to just discuss what people think about it and whether it's off base. I mean, it would probably have to go through maybe purchasing or, Patrick and his folks just to look at, because I don't have any guide on what other people have done. I know what I've done over the last, 20 years, but that's in state programs, right? So I just gave my best look at it, but we either need to get the feedback eventually or affirm it and move it on.
Well, we don't have much time in the final and we got a couple of weeks. We have until Thanksgiving.
Sorry, I tried to reach out to an attorney I work with all the time. He was unaware of the cost of a demographer. I can tell you that the software itself is $4,500 a year.
wow.
I do know that some places just use software to do it.
Mhm.
But I'll
Okay.
try. I'll call NISAC and ask if they give me a ballpark.
It would be nice if we could see both the council and the mapper come in under 100,000, not only for the full commission, but for the subcommittee, because that would bring us in well below budget.
Yes. It would. If no one else has anything that we need to cover today, then I think that we've got a lot accomplished today. And
Did we have Mark with us today?
we did not.
Oh, okay, because I know he was the one working on the timeline, and I
Right.
was wondering if we were going to get maybe a new version of that, perhaps even adding in the possibility of a public hearing in the timeframe you mentioned, Larry.
So just for my clarification, it's me, Julia, and Joan are gonna like assess the the mapping RFPs?
Right.
That's what, okay,
Yes.
Technically, that would be the responses to the mapping RFP that we get from the
Okay.
vendors.
sounds good.
And I will get some notes out to everyone as to what we have done today.
Thank you.
And
Very good.
Larry, I wanted to mention that I will not be here next week. I have some kid appointments I can't move around.
okay. Thank you, Julia. In that case-
Let me ask this question,
Yeah.
Larry. I noticed we have Adrian joining us from the subcommittee. I wondered if there's anybody else is still with us or is attending regularly from the subcommittee, or if Adrian is reporting back to everybody. I don't know what our
Maria is
arrangement is
also
to
on.
keep.
Maria is
Oh,
on.
Yeah, I'm
Oh, good.
also on, Marie.
Thank
yeah,
you,
I couldn't
Maria.
see that from here. That's good. I'm really pleased that we're keeping that communication open.
How are you doing on your process for recruiting 4 more?
Yeah,
Not going as quickly as we would like. The candidates, we're trying to attract some additional candidates.
You got one today.
Oh, that's good.
And I'm gonna forward it right now.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, we found out when we actually got to a final group that when we were actually pushing people and telling them what our time frame was, we had 2 people drop out. So that's part of the problem, is that once you get more definitive about what the commitment is, you can lose people.
I have another question, Larry.
Yes, Joan.
Next week, we will finalize the evaluation tool for council.
Yes,
Okay,
has to be done because the following Monday is when the responses are opened. Well,
What
they're due
about-
anyways.
yeah, what about for mapper, the evaluation for mapper?
What about it, Sita?
It's some, the 3 of us have to like come up with the evaluation tool, or somebody else gonna help us
The
with
three
that?
of you, the 3 of you should come up with what you want to
Okay.
use it.
I will point out that there's an important part to that too. In the RFP, we actually do list out how the scoring is going to work in terms of percentages. We
Okay.
picked a particular set of percentages and a particular set of issues for the council, and that may not be the same ones you'll want to use when you look at the mappers, but you will want to make sure that you agree on those and that you have those as part of the final RFP before it goes out.
Makes sense.
All right. Thank you all. See you next week.
thanks.
Bye
Thank
now.
you.
Have a good
Bye.
week, everybody.
Take care.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
You too.